Madeline asked me to talk about where we are in knowledge management and what's the future of knowledge management. And one way to look at this is to reflect on where we've come from over the last 25 years that we've kind of referred to this as a field. And in some respects, the field hasn't really changed that much over 25 years. Many of the same fundamental challenges and approaches are still in vogue. In another respect, there are some new technologies and new terminology that comes along and becomes current. But if we want to look at a little history, let's take a look at an example of a term that came and went. Web 2.0 and Enterprise 2.0 were the new thing earlier in the 2000s. And then after a while, those terms went away. We don't really refer to them anymore. Some of the technologies that came with them are still in use, but it tends to point out that the field itself is relatively stable. The ideas behind knowledge management of what we're trying to accomplish with it by sharing, innovating, reusing, collaborating, and learning, those haven't really changed. We've needed to do that before we started calling the field knowledge management, and we continue to need to do those things now, and we'll continue to need to do those things in the future. So even if we change some of the current terminology, the fundamentals haven't changed that much. What we've seen in recent times, what I think we'll continue to see in the future, is that new technologies become popular, but in some respects, these technologies aren't necessarily new. Let's take one example, artificial intelligence. That's currently one of the hot topics in knowledge management. In fact, the KM World Conference is going on right now. It's being done virtually this year, but certainly AI is going to be one of the topics that will be talked about a lot by both the presenters and the vendors. But also, if you look at artificial intelligence, it's not new. It's been around for a long time, and it's had its ups and downs. But right now it's in sort of a hype cycle where we say, oh, artificial intelligence, that's the thing you need to do knowledge management. Well, in fact, there's probably some potential to apply it. It's probably overhyped right now. And whether we call it artificial intelligence or cognitive computing, there's a need for that to help augment our ability to make decisions, to understand what's going on around us. But it's not a magic cure, magic panacea for knowledge management. Similarly, with any other approach, whether it be analytics or business intelligence, those are viewed as recent technologies, but once again, they've actually been around for a long time. Whether we call them analytics or whether we call them something else, that approach is not new. So I guess I would say that the field of knowledge management is relatively stable. We're tackling some of the same problems. It tends to be new to many people who are entering it for the first time. So every year at the KM World Conference, there are lots of people who have just joined the field, and to them it's brand new and exciting and they're learning about it. And to those of us who've been in the field for a long time, we can help those people come along. But in reality, there isn't all that much that's changed. And one example of that, I wrote my first book back in 2006, implementing a knowledge management program. And I defined 50 components of knowledge management that I wrote about in the book. And when I wrote my second book, which was promoting a knowledge management program, I had to update that list of 50, and that was 10 years later. But in fact, I only had to change 3 out of the 50 components to something new to reflect more recent trends. So I'd say that's a sign that most of what's been going on in the field hasn't changed that much. What the future should hold is applying these things in new and better ways. One example of that would be, we've talked about communities for a long time. That's not a new concept. To some people it is, but they've actually been around for a long time. But applying them into corporate settings can in many cases be brand new for a company. They may never have had communities of practice inside a company. So if you attempt to implement that, that'll seem like a new thing. So I think there's 2 ways of looking at the components that make up knowledge management and the approaches that we use. One is that it's always new to somebody, and another response is they've been around and many of us have been using them for some time.